Foreign Relations and Judiciary Committees, Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. And here at the table, columnist and associate editor for the Washington Post, David Ignatius. He's the author of the new thriller, The Quantum Spy, which is out now.
This is great.
And, Joe, you know what?
Oh, my God.
It makes a great gift.
It's available for Christmas. I bought it in bulk yesterday, bought hundreds of them, and I'm just going to hand them out on the street because David said it makes a great Christmas gift, and it does.
It does, and not just in the U.S. It's great in Asia. It has China themes, and we got a billion potential buyers.
Oh, good Lord, he's shameless. It just continues.
I've got to say, Mika, I was going to get Jack a couple of Lego sets for Christmas, but I actually gave him the book early, my 9-year-old son.
I don't want the Legos to go ungiven. I think that'd be a mistake.
Yeah, I said, here you go, Jack. Little light reading before bedtime.
Yeah. All right, so take it away, Joe. Do you want to start and stay on North Korea, or should we go to the Democrats with Senator Coons?
Well, why don't we start with North Korea? David, what's your take on the president's speech yesterday, other than the self-promotion of his course in Jersey?
He never lets a plug opportunity go unused, but I thought the speech was a little more tempered in tone. I think he was trying to say to South Koreans, your South Korean economy, your culture, your drive is so much more powerful than the cult in the North. He called it a hell on earth. He used language that in truth would speak to South Koreans. That's the way they feel about their country. And I thought he was, in a sense, talking about a pathway with these trips to Japan, South Korea, now China, a pathway toward diplomacy as opposed to the usual kind of very hawkish rhetoric we've gotten. The key to this trip will come over the next couple of days in China. That's the heart of what he's going to do, and we'll see what he gets from the Chinese. But I thought the tone in South Korea was a little more moderate than it has been recently.
Senator Coons, it's Willie Geist. Good to see you this morning. We had one of your Senate colleagues on yesterday, Angus King, and he conceded that he thought the tough talk and some of the rhetoric, not all of it previously, not the fire and fury, but more recent tough talk from President Trump was okay by him and perhaps a good strategy as long as it was accompanied by diplomatic moves on the back channels. What do you believe about the strategy right now? As you watch President Trump move across Asia when it relates to North Korea, how's he doing right now?
Well, Willie, I'm encouraged by the tone and tenor of the trip. Obviously, the self-promotion notwithstanding. To have President Trump move towards a more diplomatic tone after some early bluster. Now that we have pre-positioned 3 aircraft carrier groups, nuclear subs, personnel, and material in the region, I think President Trump is striking the right balance between having previously been overly threatening and now pursuing a diplomatic alternative. There has to be an off-ramp for North Korea to consider taking. He's going to have to be strong with Xi Jinping. The next couple of days are going to be crucial. But all of us who worry about America's security and about the human consequences of a potential confrontation with North Korea going wrong have to be encouraged by President Trump's tone.
Casey Hunt.
Senator Coons, good to see you this morning. I want to change the subject slightly to politics here. Obviously, your state, very blue, but you're familiar with dynamics in the Philadelphia suburbs, moderate Republicans. I'm curious what you think the impact of tonight's results are going to be on the United States Senate. What kind of impact might it have on the thinking of Susan Collins, for example? Is this going to mean that the president is going to have to work more with Democrats if he wants to accomplish things?
I think that's right, Casey, and that's a great question. There's a lot of attention being paid to the big wins in Virginia and New Jersey, but just across the Pennsylvania state line for me are a series of counties, the so-called collar counties of Philadelphia, where at the county level, there were big wins by Democrats in Bucks County, in Delaware County. In Chester County, Pennsylvania, there has never been a county elected Democrat since the 1700s. And Democratic candidates swept the 4 county row offices that were up for election. What does that mean? I think it means that members of the House who represent suburban districts, who are Republicans are going to have to begin moving towards the middle. I think it's going to make it clear to the president, or at least members of his team, that if they don't begin some real outreach to Democrats on tax reform and on other priorities they have, they're not going to get their legislative agenda through. And frankly, I think the president throwing a sideways grenade back at Ed Gillespie after his loss last night isn't very encouraging for Republican electeds like Susan Collins, who I think are now going to look forward and say their path towards legislative success will rely on working across the aisle here in Congress rather than counting on President Trump to necessarily lead them forward as a coherent party.
Jim Vandehei.
Senator, the math in the Senate for your colleagues is difficult, right? You've got 10 senators, your colleagues that are up in states that Trump won, where the demographics, I think, are trickier than they might be in Virginia, certainly than they would be in Connecticut. What's the formula? What do you say to somebody who's running in Trump country, especially a state, the 5 states where Trump won by double digits? How do you thread that needle if you're a Democrat running in that arena?
Well, the Democratic senators who are incumbents up for election this time in the 5 states you're referencing, in states like Indiana, North Dakota, Montana, Missouri, West Virginia, are terrific, active, engaged local campaigners. They're very authentic people. They connect well in their home states. And I'd say to them, avoid letting your campaign be nationalized. Don't really make this about Democrats versus Republicans. Make it about you, your leadership, and your capabilities. These are folks who've been willing to meet with President Trump, to consider working with him across the aisle where it makes sense, but they've also stood firm in sticking to their core principles on things like defending the ACA and access to good quality health care for folks in their states. We just had a meeting as a group. There were about 12 Democratic senators yesterday evening who met with Gary Cohn, the chief economic advisor to President Trump. The president called in from Asia. And I think it's important that these Democrats running for re-election in deeply red states show that they continue to try and legislate responsibly across the aisle.
Are the stories true from that meeting? I talked about the meeting last night. A lot of reporting, including on our site, about that meeting and what Donald Trump said to you about the implications for his own taxes, that he went on this riff about how the tax bill, his accountants are telling him, was actually bad for him. Tell us what the president said.
The president said a number of things, and I frankly just appreciated the opportunity to sit down with some of his chief advisors, and that he took the time from his trip to Asia to call in. It was an interesting conversation. He touched on a number of different topics. But if there was one theme from our side, it was we should have been included and consulted earlier. We've got ideas. We want to work across the aisle to strengthen the middle class, to support manufacturing, to make our country more competitive. And the folks on the other side of the table, including the president calling in from Asia, said, just wait. You're going to see a different tax bill in the Senate than the House. We're at the beginning of a process, not at the end.
Senator, last week, Assistant Attorney General for the National Security Division, Dana Bente, resigned. You're submitting a letter to Jeff Sessions. You're concerned about this. Tell us about that.
Well, Dana Bente is a career federal prosecutor who was not just running the Eastern District of Virginia, but also the acting head of the National Security Division in the Department of Justice. I just was troubled that immediately following the release of indictments, given reporting that had suggested Mr. Bente was running a fairly active component of the Mueller investigation, that he was fairly abruptly asked to resign. I just wanted to ask some questions about the timing, given the troubling pattern of the president's personal intervention by interviewing candidates for U.S. attorney in several key jurisdictions, and given everything else that's going on that makes me concerned about Robert Mueller and his security. Dana Bente would be the 4th in line in succession in the Department of Justice. So I think it's an important seat and an important role that he's played that deserves some oversight.
All right, Senator Chris Coons, thank you so much. We'll be following that and looking for a response. Coming up, Donna Brazile insists she never claimed the Democrats' primary process was rigged. So why did so many people get that impression